Hey friends, we are back with another episode of It's Not Complicated, a podcast from Central United Methodist Church. I'm Jenny Williams, the senior pastor at Central, and I'm here with one of my favorite co-hosts.
I'm Chase Burns, I'm the executive pastor at Central.
Virginia's not going to be with us today, but I promise to try to make some vague pop culture reference that only you will appreciate. I also want to remind you we are reading the Bible, and as wonderful as our Bible is, it also has some topics that are not for all ages and all ears. So if you have someone listening with you with sensitive ears, just be mindful. So, there's what I've found is that I have not read Deuteronomy much.
I mean, I think we used to read it like every night before we said our nightly prayers. Did you not go through Deuteronomy?
Did you?
No, not at all.
I mean, I've definitely read the Bible through once or twice, and then of course pieces. But I will say, up until this moment, I have skimmed this one. I'll tell you that. I'm in a confession time right here. Because I did not realize that Deuteronomy is written in first person, supposedly Moses first person. So it basically works like if Moses had written all of his diaries down for the purpose of, so that we could read it thousands of years later.
I was kind of on that same path in reading this, and I was a little bit upset for the people of Israel because I was like, really? After 1/3 of your life? And now it's time. Oh, 2/3. After 2/3 of your life, because he was 40 years old when they left, and now it's been 40 years, and now he's like, now I'm going to address you all as a whole. Like he had individual conversations, but now he stands in front of the people of Israel. I would have been like, Mo, who?
Yeah.
Who is this?
Exactly. Well, and also he has addressed the congregation before.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Maybe this is a different congregation because all the old ones died out.
It could be. I thought it was just kind of a couple of pockets, and Aaron did most of the talking.
Maybe so. Oh, maybe that's it.
There were some groups that came before him.
Okay.
But this is the first. Well, this is the first time where we have this is Moses' first address, and here's an introduction for the rest of this chapter, which I think we've already heard. So.
We've already heard a lot of this.
A lot of this.
So I loved that it opened up with God saying, you've been on this mountain long enough. Get going. And I'm like, was this not God's command?
Right.
For
Stay
them
here
to be?
For a little bit.
God's like, what are you doing? It feels, anyway, I get it. Maybe it was supposed to be motivational. God's like, get up, get going. Girl, wash your face. Get across that Jordan.
What are you waiting for?
Right.
You?
So anyway, that's where we are. Moses is going to just recap everything that's ever happened to them, which I personally did not need, but maybe the Israelites did,
Yeah, because everybody died off. So it's here you go.
Sure.
Here's these things.
So then Moses reiterates, again, chapter 2, everything that's ever happened to them. Everything that's ever happened to them.
It's Meemaw used to tell us about the past of Egypt. We used to walk up the side of the wilderness both ways to school
in the snow.
In the snow,
carrying our scrolls and our what did ancient Israelites used to write with?
Chisels. Because of the tablets.
I guess so. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, it's a lot. In chapter 3. Guess what they talk about there?
What?
It's still just a recap of everything they've ever done.
So if you've been reading along with us, you've heard a lot of this already. If you're joining us today, just come back to the end of Genesis and recap, and it's the same stuff.
Yeah. Genesis?
The end of Genesis, moving into Exodus.
Oh, sure. Yep. Yes, I see what you're saying. This is a long diary entry, but, Moses did have a lot of time to write, 40 years, so. Chapter 4, it kind of changes speeds a little bit because, well, it still goes over all the laws.
Right.
But it tells you that they are also for the future generations.
Yeah.
That was not explicit before this, evidently.
Right. Now we know that we're going to go in. And so here's kind of, I'm setting it up. Of course, he knows that he's not going to go in there too.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I'm not going to go with you. So just here's.
Does he know that by this point?
Yeah.
I honestly can't remember it.
Yeah, because it was, I think, was it last week or the week before? It
was in Numbers when he banged on the
Yep,
rock. Okay,
yep.
you're right. But Moses is like, don't forget to tell your children. Which verse 25 through 27 of chapter 4. Do you have the Bible pulled up?
I do have the Bible pulled up.
Will you read that? Because I feel like we'll talk about why. But
yeah, and so this is a version. I think it's NRSV or NIV or so. NLV. It is one of them. So if you have something different, it is a Bible version. So in the future, when you have children and grandchildren, and have lived in the land a long time, do not corrupt yourself by making idols of any kind. This is evil in the sight of the Lord your God and will arouse his anger. Today I call on heaven and earth as witnesses against you. If you break my covenant, you will quickly disappear from the land you are crossing the Jordan to occupy. You will live there only a short time, and then you will be utterly destroyed. For the Lord will scatter you among the nations where only a few of you will survive. This is the word of God for we, the people of God.
Thanks be to
Thanks
God.
be to God.
So I thought this was one thing I meant to say at the beginning of this podcast is that Deuteronomy was probably written around the time of the exile.
Yeah.
Of course, it was compiled over generations through stories handed down from Moses all the way to, the prophet Jeremiah, Isaiah, those types of, that timeline. But it probably wasn't actually written down until the people of Israel had already been exiled from their land, had been taken away, carried away. There was a remnant, but they were scattered all throughout the Babylonian Empire, right?
Yeah, and so we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years after this, but also a while in exile too. And we'll get to that when we get to like Isaiah and 2nd Isaiah. That's a whole nother story.
That is a whole other story. And people, Chase, you might have just blown someone's minds with 2nd Isaiah, but nobody freak out. We'll get there. We'll get there. It'll make sense at some point. But I say all that to say this: if you read Deuteronomy with the mindset that these stories or these commands in particular were written down all the way then, you start to see why they hit so hard. Tell your children, because they did not tell their children.
I know.
Spoiler alert. But this is also a little bit of foreshadowing for the exile when Moses tells them that if you don't do this, that God will scatter you into the nations and a few will remain, but it won't look like what it was supposed to look like, right?
Right.
So anyway.
Speaking of foreshadowing.
Okay.
429.
Oh, yeah.
But from there you will search again for the Lord your God, and you will search for him with all your heart and soul, and you will find him.
Yeah. I don't know if you were a Jeremiah 29 kid, were you?
No, this was your notes.
I know. Well, I know. I'm sharing with you a personal story, Chase. I'm trying to engage this.
No, did you read? Were you at
Jeremiah 29, 11 through 13 was my life verse for a long time.
Okay.
Me and, 400 other million Bible kids.
Okay, what's this about? What?
Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. You will come to me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And then 13, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart.
Oh, that's also from Messiah. If with all your heart you truly find me. Handel's Messiah. Love it.
Okay, same.
Yeah.
But my point is that Jeremiah the prophet was quoting this passage from Deuteronomy.
Yep.
But they were probably written down, actually.
At the same time.
So anyway, I thought that was beautiful. Like, honestly, this time through the Bible, well done on the ways the story connects from start to finish.
Yeah.
I am seeing things in this read through that I'm like, oh, I read about that here.
It's all peppered through.
It is.
Like, speaking of peppered through, like with especially this particular book, I'm doing quotes for those who aren't watching. For this particular book,
Why are you doing quotes?
Why am I doing?
Yeah.
Because I think the Bible's kind of like a library, and you have all these different types of writings, and so this is a book, and that's why we call it a book. But anyway, like it's peppered through like all the things that we've heard before. You get these little spots of them, and so like here's the next one is there's a little mention again about the cities of refuge.
Yeah.
In case when you accidentally murder somebody, you can go to a neighboring city of refuge.
If you accidentally murder somebody.
Yeah, isn't that whoopsies?
Yeah, whoops, you're dead. I have to go.
No take backs.
I know, but they do. They talk about those cities of refuge a lot.
Yeah.
So, so moving on to chapter 5,
I've never heard of these before. What is this?
This is the 10 Commandments.
What?
Yes. Have you heard of them?
We still have not heard the song.
I'm not doing the song. I'm not ready. Give me another 39 weeks.
For those who are following our Facebook follow-ups, there might be one there if like you just comment. We really want to hear the song. We might post it on the Facebook group.
I might do that. That's fair.
Maybe.
It's a big maybe. But what's not a big maybe is that the 10 Commandments are still on. 10 Commandments still on.
Yeah,
we're doing those.
I think that's okay.
Oh, I'm good with the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
I feel like that's great. And then that's chapter 5, Deuteronomy chapter 5.
Yeah.
But then Deuteronomy chapter 6 is pretty important because that's where we get the Shama.
Yeah.
The what has become the famous daily Jewish prayer in chapter 6, verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. And of course, where do we hear that elsewhere?
I think Jesus said that.
It's a Jesus thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And so after the 10 Commandments are given and Moses is like, these are all the commandments. You have to do them. You have to love the Lord. You have to follow the Lord. Loving the Lord is following the Lord's commandments with all your heart, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, recite them to your children. Talk about them at home and out and about. Put them on those little coffee table, like, conversation starter kits and things like that.
Icebreakers.
Yes, exactly. Who gets to die today?
Oh, gosh.
Anyway.
I'm so sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, so, and then also Moses reminds them that the basis of all of these laws is the Exodus. Everything, their whole identity comes from the fact that they were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord God brought them out. And that is why they follow these commands. Right. So, that's a good one.
But do they follow the commandments?
I mean, no.
Because chapter 7's another reminder.
Yes.
Don't worship other idols.
Yeah.
Or
don't worship foreign gods.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't worship like the foreign nations.
Right.
Keep it Israeli.
Yeah, because there's like evidently multiple deities going on right here.
Obviously,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about idolatry because obviously we've talked a lot about it during the law, but it will continue to show up in the Old Testament in particular and in the New as well. But we have this idea of idolatry as, the way that we conceive. I'm sorry, I just touched my mic. I'm going to re-say that. We have this idea of idolatry that the way that we conceive of loving God and having a relationship with God is the same way that these folks would have then been like, oh, Baal, I love you, Baal. Like, I want to have a personal relationship with Baal. And that's just not how that worked.
Right.
Back then, people felt very much, and to some extent we can relate to this, people felt very much at the mercy of the deities at play. So obviously Israel were followers of Yahweh, and they had seen how Yahweh had brought them out of Egypt and out of slavery and been faithful to them. But there was always this apprehension that it wouldn't be enough. All of their other counterparts, tribal counterparts around them, all the other nations, all the other people groups had multiple deities.
Yeah.
They had a god for the sun, right? To make sure the sun shined. They had a god of the deep who was controlling all that was in there. They had fertility gods to make sure that crops grow, that livestock and herds and children even were healthy and plentiful. So there's this idea that to worship another god was basically to have an insurance policy. Like we primarily worship Yahweh.
Yeah.
But there would be temptation. God knew that there would be temptation to throw out, throw some spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
And evidently this was like a really big problem. In fact, this chapter names 9 nations that are put under Harem, which is a decree to destroy. And so you're not going to have any promises or covenants with them. You're not going to intermarry there. You're going to rip down the altars. You're going to destroy everything. And this will come up later in some of Moses' recap of other things that you should do to these people that you war with. And so it's like you're going to go into the land of milk and honey, but you're also still going to be at war.
Yeah.
So there's a reality there. In fact, later on we'll talk a little bit about military stuff too. So it's just full of stories.
Full of stuff. So that's chapter 7. Chapter 8 moves us into more ideas about to rely on God. That makes sense following the idolatry talk.
Right.
It does have, in Deuteronomy 8:3, it talks about how Moses is reminding them about manna and how God provided manna in the wilderness so that they would know that man cannot live on bread alone.
That's right. They can live on what?
Every word that proceeded from the Lord's mouth.
Oh, like I was gonna say what, like manna.
Oh,
like what? There's a wall there.
I just hit my head. Sorry. Yes, you're right. What is it?
They can live on what? Okay, sorry. Yeah. Oh my goodness! But that's a reminder.
Where's Virginia? We need Virginia.
That was a reminder, but it was they forgot. I think
they did forget. But this is what Jesus quotes to Satan whenever Satan's like, "You should turn this rock into bread." Mm-hmm. So Jesus was like, "Let me pull out Deuteronomy 8:3. What are you gonna do about that?"
Yeah, snap. There it is.
Snap.
I don't know. Crackle.
Oh, jeez.
Hey,
okay.
David had 3 sons.
No.
Wait. What is
David's father.
David's father had 3 sons. Snap, Crackle, and who? Okay, y'all think about it.
David.
Okay, well, I didn't get it for 2 weeks, but then I'm just like, maybe it was...
Well, Pop
Anyway.
seems like the right answer.
Right?
Maybe she said maybe David was a stepchild. Anyway, we've lost the what were we?
We're on day 45
Thank
now.
you. Day 45, Deuteronomy 9, y'all.
I love this. This is a proclamation of victory by God's grace. And so
You have a song.
I have a song.
Okay.
Oh, victory in Yahweh. I mean, it could have worked.
It could have worked.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So God is like, well, via Moses, they're like, we are about to cross the Jordan and take over. We are going to live in cities with walls that reach the sky.
Now, wait a second. Wasn't that problematic before?
It does. It's giving Babel.
Babel? Mm-hmm. A little bit of Babel. Yeah.
But it's different.
Yeah.
This time.
It's
for reasons.
Different, I guess.
It is different for reasons. No, I'm wondering if they're saying like they're preparing them to go into Jericho, but remember what happens at Jericho.
Yeah.
The walls fall down.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
They don't last. There's a whole other recap.
Yeah, don't forget about the gold tablets the gold calf. That's gold tablets.
Whoops.
That's the Book of Mormon.
A different thing.
A different kind of musical. Okay, so don't forget about the gold calf and the tablets.
Yes. And I loved how God addresses this through, well, I guess I keep calling it God. It's really Moses speaking. Mm-hmm. So he has framed God's words, in my opinion, in a specific way.
Or it is a writer
obviously
saying what Moses might have said centuries ago, recap, in quoting God.
Yes.
It's like,
but it gets a little passive-aggressive for me because God's like, Moses is saying like, I'm gonna take you over into the promised land, but you do not get this because you are righteous, because you are actually very stubborn. You have screwed up a lot. And then Moses lists all the ways and then says, God is very mad at you, but out of the goodness of God's heart, very considerate, I'm going to go ahead and let you enter the promised land.
Yeah.
And then at the end of all of this, like Moses reminds them that Moses, right, the most humble man.
Yeah, right.
That reminds them that he saved the day with this epic intercessory prayer before God.
Yeah.
Pleading for God for forgiveness, for reconciliation. he falls on his face and his knees again, and God's like, okay, fine.
Yeah. And the story continues and continues.
Yes.
It keeps going. It's like we still get.
Yep.
You just turn the chapter, and Moses is still going on.
I mean, does Moses ever? It does make me wonder if he's now that Aaron isn't having the platform.
Yeah.
If Moses is like, it is my turn.
I got this.
I have been with you people for 40 days. I have been holding this in. But yeah, chapter 10, we got more recap. We've got a new copy of the covenant.
Right.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Just
I guess.
In case.
Yeah. It's always good to have a backup, I think.
Mm-hmm. It was on, what was it, wood of some kind. It was like
I thought it was stone too. Was it acacia?
Acacia wood.
No, it was stone, and they put it in acacia wood box.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's like a backup tablet. No, the end is kind of like the call to love is kind of beautiful.
It is.
Yeah, so it goes a little bit like look to the highest heavens and the earths and everything, and it all belongs to the Lord your God. Yet the Lord chose your ancestors as his object of Yahweh's love, and chose you, their descendants, as evident today. So stop being jerks. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like this butter up, and then at the end it's like, so stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah, get it together, Israel. Chapter 11 is another reminder to love God and keep the commandments. This is very like, I don't know if you've ever left the house and you just really need to make sure that you turned your curling iron off.
I'm bald. Stove.
Okay, and so you go back and you like check
it,
and then you go back and you unplug it, and then you go back and you just like put it away, like just there's no accidents so that it doesn't get plugged back in and turned back on. You just like have to triple check, quadruple check. I feel like that's what Moses is doing with this whole commandment business because oh my gosh, like honestly, at this point, if I'm the Israelites, I'm like, you know what? I was on board until you told me this 9 times, and now I'm mad, and now I'm just gonna not do it because you've told me too many times.
And I wonder if it's like not just for the grown-ups, I guess, but also really for the descendants, like your descendants, and they're gonna have descendants in this land. So I'm really emphasizing this because your children weren't there when you did these things or when your parents witnessed these things.
Okay.
And maybe it's kind of like that.
Well, that's
generational
a much more
reminder.
generous reading than I was giving it, so I appreciate that perspective.
Well, I'm not a fan of the if and thens that's offered here.
Yeah.
Like here, if you do this, then this is going to happen. And there's a whole list of different blessings that happen or different curses that happen. And to me, that's kind of we can take that out of context.
For sure.
And there'll be even more that this happens later on. I'll talk a little bit more about. I'm going to put that in a place right here, and we'll pick that back up here in a second.
I do think that, like so many of these commands and just instructions that God gives through Moses, I think these were specific to Israel. I don't think this is not like the book of Proverbs, like ways to, I think in this case, this is to the broad Israel community.
Right.
Keep my commandments and you'll be under my protection. If you break the commandments, you are effectively removing yourself. So whatever happens, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But to your point, we take stuff like this, and if we see an entire community that has been destroyed by a natural disaster or war, and we're like, well, I guess they hadn't followed God's commands.
That's right.
We were warned in Deuteronomy. I mean, I think that's a really unfair way to read this.
Yeah, or if there's I don't know, some craziness going on. It's like if it's the Lord's will, and it's like, wait a second, let's use our intellect and all that stuff.
Exactly. Chapter 12, God, they have to address these willy-nilly offerings.
Yeah.
Get out of here with that.
But they have to address it, but what's interesting is that it's like we don't know where to address it at yet.
No.
It's like you're going to have a place to worship. You don't have it yet, but God will show you where it's at.
Sure.
And when you do that, then you'll have the place that you do X, Y, and Z. But when that happens, when you know where it's at, make sure you eat your meals at home and don't eat the offerings. And it might be a little bloody, but just pour the blood outside.
Yeah.
What?
It's very, and you can't eat the blood.
Right. No.
But it But if you need to, you go pour it outside. There are just very specific meat consumption instructions in this chapter.
So did they not like medium well?
No.
Was it like well done?
I think it was well done.
Oh, bless their hearts.
Because I know.
That's not how you eat a steak.
No, because they, blood was the lifeline, and they had to get all the lifeline out in order for reasons to follow the
culture.
Well, I know.
It would not have
Well,
worked.
you'd have to put it in something. Otherwise, it's going to be so dry. I mean,
Fair.
no wonder they needed more water. They were chewing on this jerky.
And beef jerky for steak.
Yeah. I mean, they probably exhausted their water sources pretty quickly. But anyway, that was in chapter 12. By day 46, we move on to Deuteronomy chapter 13.
Guess what?
What?
You shouldn't worship other gods.
Oh.
Have we said that yet?
That is new information.
And
Oh, this is good.
if you there will be people that are doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So if you hear about someone doing it, and you have to make sure that they're doing it, right? Then you can destroy the town, the people, and the livestock. You can't plunder, you can't take anything from it. And once it's destroyed, it can't be rebuilt.
Okay.
Just leave it in ruins.
Oh, forever of
Thus
all time.
saith somebody who wrote about Moses saying about the Lord.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and the don't worship other gods thing is serious. And while I don't know that I am in alignment with the response to people who do that,
Right.
I do understand the idea that God is just really reiterating, please trust me.
Yeah.
I have not let you down. Please
Yeah.
trust me. We need to hear that in our lives today. Because there are things, we've talked about this a little bit in our church services recently, that there are things in our life that probably we place more literal trust in than we do God.
Right.
Like we say we trust God, but then we're also going to have like some things on the side to protect ourselves just in case. And that's just another form of idolatry.
Yeah.
It's not Baal. It's not a
Right,
Canaanite.
right.
It's not Molech. We're not sacrificing our children.
Right.
But what are the things that we do sacrifice by trusting something else before we trust God?
And that's a wise reminder for their context, to our context and their context, because they're not only are they failing a lot of the times, evidently, about these reminders, right? They're getting, but also when they go into an area, when they conquer a group, not everybody is destroyed. Like there are still people who will be living in the promised land, and it mentions that here later. But also as they've been through their travels, they've always had strangers among them.
Yeah.
And so it's like you have not only your internal influence that's been messed up or have messed up, like we all do, but also some external influence as well too. So there's a lot of warning about all of the aforementioned.
Yeah. Yep. Chapter 14, there are more reminders. There are animals you can eat.
Are there?
You have to cook them to death, but you can eat them. And then, this was one of my favorites. In chapter 14, verse 1, it just starts off like, and by the way, do not shave your forehead for the dead or you'll regret it. And I had some questions about this.
Like, where does the forehead start?
That was my main question. What are these? Is this like a Neanderthal situation?
Like you have to have the unibrow. I mean, it just has to happen.
Yeah, sorry. No plucking?
No plucking.
I did also think, so what I read is that it's basically this first part of your hairline.
Okay.
I guess that was a way that they would cut it really short in mourning, but I don't know why you're not supposed to, but you're just not. Maybe
I am perpetually in mourning. Is that the thing?
Yes. But I also wondered, because Moses is like, don't do this or you'll regret it. And I did wonder if it was like the modern version of cutting bangs.
Yeah.
Because you always like, I'm going to cut some bangs. It'll be so cute. And
Is it not?
Don't do it.
Okay, don't do it. I'll keep that in mind.
Don't do that, Chase. But anyway, we've all been there.
Yeah, fair.
1/10 of the crops harvest you got to bring to worship.
Yeah.
We know that. That's the tithe.
Yeah.
In the third year, you take the tithe and you store it in the nearest town for foreigners as well as Levites.
Yeah.
Because remember, the Levites can't have their own land.
That's right.
It is nice, though. Even as complicated as this law was, there was always built in this idea that you're supposed to take care of people, foreigners, widows, vulnerable people.
Yeah.
So.
And kind of gives also kind of a foretelling of each city will have a Levite or a priestly person to take care of some of the, laws, but also spiritual practices in the community as well. And got to care for them too.
Yep.
Yep. I love that.
Yep. Chapter 15 moves on. We've got the
best rule ever.
Do it.
The best rule ever. It's at the end of 7th year, all debts are canceled. Done. Debt free. It is like the ultimate Dave Ramsey. It only takes 7 years. And no envelopes. So if you have done that program, that is great.
Oh, you know,
for
you know.
But I'm just saying, it's more than 7 years. So.
And I would like to take a moment to talk to my bank, Arvest. Just kidding.
Shout out.
Yeah.
But actually, the best rule, I think, from this particular chapter I really love is there should be no poor among you, for the Lord God is blessing you. Like you're about to receive this foretold promise for generations. We're talking about generations upon generations, like make of you great nations and set you up for success. And here we are, we're about to enter this land, and when you go, then there's no poor among you because you have been blessed. I'm like, I love this.
That's great. They got this right all the time.
Did they?
I don't know. I'm asking. No, they didn't. And this is such a beautiful aspirational thing that I just don't know that we've ever. Even Jesus said there will always be poor among you.
Yeah, that's true. The idea is great.
It's wonderful.
The idea is great. And here's some other things that are really cool that I really liked about this chapter. So if you are a male servant and you are released, don't worry, you're not going to go empty-handed. You're going to get a little bit of something. Again, we're back in ancient times, and it's just for the males.
Okay. Well,
but if the servant, male or female, doesn't want to leave because they love the family, you get to be a lifelong part of the family, but as a servant. But you have to tell them you don't want to go. You're allowed to stay there. And then there's that at-home piercing that takes place. They put your earlobe against a door, and there's an ice pick involved. So there you go. That's the mark of a lifelong member of the family.
That's what a beautiful ceremony that would have been. As always, this chapter closes out with, please do not eat the blood. Take it outside, pour it on the ground like a civilized person. For the Lord's sake.
So all the recaps, all the rules, and even the oddities here, we kind of get back to our spiritual practices in the next chapter, chapter 16. And it starts off with the 3 feasts, and it's the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or the Passover. And that takes place in the month of Abib, or Abib. And if you don't know what that is the first month of the Hebrew calendar, which is the month of the Nisan in the current calendar. So it's when you have a barely ripening of the first month of spring, or the first month of spring. So Babylonian calendar is March, April. That was a lot of words that I just said because I was trying to read at the same time. So basically, when they celebrated Passover is around between March and April. There's a special place. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, go ahead.
There is, once again, a special place for the sacrifice to happen. Not in your town, but there's going to be a one place. We still don't know where that's going to be, but just know it's TBD.
It's going to be the temple.
Is it?
I don't know. Don't you think?
I
in the courtyard of the temple.
I thought so.
Okay.
I thought
so.
But
But you're not sure?
I'm not sure that it was.
Okay.
I'm not sure that it was.
Good to know.
But then it's okay. Once you go and you make the journey to wherever and you do the sacrifice, there's a barbecue, so you get to have some lamb chops.
Nice.
And then there's a festival of harvest that follows harvest. It's 7 weeks from the start of harvest to the end of harvest. Everyone gets to celebrate. Everyone. And it lists all the people. So not just the family, but servants and men and women and children. You don't hear a lot about women and children. You hear more about women than you do children. But here, everybody, the foreigner, everybody gets to celebrate. It's a big old party. And then the Festival of Shelters is 7 days at the end of the harvest. So I don't know. Is this like a continuation of the harvest? Like you just like, hey.
It must be.
Here we go.
Because I don't know why. But yes, if it's 7 days, or I bet not. I bet it's the last 7 days of the harvest.
Okay.
So months are the Festival of Booths. I bet those two are the same thing, but that's just the culmination week.
Fair. Well, lots of partying.
I'm here for it.
Well, with lots of partying, you need some rules.
Oh, what good party doesn't have a solid set of rules?
I mean, I'm just saying. You have don't forget the commandments and all of the other things.
Once again, I don't think Moses was invited to very many parties.
It's like, but this is how the writing goes. It's like party, worship, or it's worship, party. And then, by the way, I think we need some justices.
Yeah. And if you want to put someone to death, here are some solid reasons.
Right.
Yeah, and then also it closes out by like Asherah poles are bad.
That's it.
By the way, no more information necessary.
FYI.
Okay. Whew. Deuteronomy 17, day 47. Y'all, we have been doing this for 47 days.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, now
Wow.
it's now even longer, but yes. I'm actually unsure where we are in time. Chase, do you know where we are in time?
Today is Tuesday.
Okay.
That's about all I got.
Got it. But so 47, so chapter 17, again, like we've had too much party talk and Moses is like, these people are spoiled.
Right.
So
right.
now we got to get
So
into
spoiled.
when we can start stoning people.
What?
Let's just do it. Let's get
Okay.
some stoning on the docket. So if there was someone who was an unbeliever and they were part of the community, did they have to do anything bad or just exist?
I don't know because they have guests among them. Well, here's the thing: like there were foreigners among them. They weren't allowed to do certain things, but there were certain things that when you celebrated then they had to if they were staying with you.
I will say, I'm wondering if these rules are specifically for Israelites. So if you haven't, I know what it is. I remember reading this now. So it's like if you had an Israelite that said that they were worshiping God and following God's commands,
Yes.
but they broke the commands
Uh-huh.
and did all these things, worshipped idols,
Yes.
then God's like, sniff them out and snuff them out.
That's it.
Sniff them out and snuff them out. I'm going to make a t-shirt for that, I think.
Okay.
Sniff them out, snuff them out. God. You know what I'm saying? No, I do. God does not endorse this message. That's not true.
No.
That's not true. But it's very strict. Yeah, you can't get caught worshiping idols as an Israelite or else you will get stoned. Now, to be fair, they were very concerned about the legal process.
Yes, they were.
So you had to have more than one witness.
Yes, there was a court system in place. You did have established judges. If there was a discrepancy on if the accusation was correct or not, then they had we have our district courts and you take it to the state court, Supreme Court, blah blah blah. Well, they had you can excel. Yeah, you can move up that court system as well, except you would take them to the priest. Now. Later on, we think about Sadducees and Pharisees, that those who teach the law and those who study the law and all that. But that hasn't come around, and that won't come around until the intermission between the Old Testament and New Testament is when those groups start up. So right now you just have your priest, and they do it all.
Yeah.
Do it all. They
do it all. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, I'm really bad at accents. I regret it. So then it starts talking about if you want to get a king.
Like, where did this come from? Just FYI.
I actually thought this was a huge no-no. I was shocked when I read this. Again, I'm now realizing how much I had previously skimmed Deuteronomy.
Right.
But they're like, yeah, it's like if you want to get a king, do this. Don't let them have any business with Egypt. They can't have too many wives.
Yeah, so how many?
It doesn't say.
Right.
I think they intentionally left this a little fuzzy. And then, but I am like, I thought when we got to 1 Samuel and the people start asking for a king, that Samuel is deeply offended by this, as is God.
Well, and this kind of goes back to who is writing this. Because remember, if this is later on and they're coming back from the Babylonian exile, they're headed back home to Israel, and they have a history of kings.
Sure. So they need to figure out how this came out. I mean, they need to put this into place. I think you're right about that.
But I love this part. It's like, and if you do have a king, like this section right here, that king needs to copy it down and chisel, whatever, and keep it with them. And they have to read it daily to remind them of the rules.
Okay. I actually have some things I would have some of our current leadership write down and read daily.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying?
Constitution? Sorry. Or are you talking about us? Oh, okay. Sorry. We love everybody because God teaches us to love our neighbor, right? Jesus loves you. It's not complicated. And so polarization is not something that we care for or support. And so whoever you are, wherever you are, this is the kind of conversation, laughter and love is kind of what we're after.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. To your point about the comment that we can't remember that I made, I guarantee you that no matter who you're voting for politically, they laughed at your joke and thought it was talking about the other side.
Yes.
So you're just fine. All right, chapter 18. Read the Bible. We're talking about gifts for priests and Levites. Now, I'm going to be honest, Chase, you've lost some gifts today.
I'm not going to get any sheep this week.
No. We've got cattle. We've got grain gifts. We've got wine, olive oil, wool. I will accept any of these gifts except for the cattle and the grain. I'll take the grain. No sheep and goats for me, please. Can I tell a quick story that's really unrelated?
Yes.
Except that it does have animal husbandry involved in it.
Okay.
So we talked about the value of the difference between sheep and cows a couple weeks ago. Yes. And we had a petting zoo at my previous church every Easter.
Okay.
And we had this one family that raised, smaller herd animals or farm animals, I guess, on their property. And they would bring them and let us just put them in a little pen. And it was really sweet. And so the woman said, they had 2 little lambs here. And she said, they're triplets. And she moved her arms out kind of like this, because there was a larger one over here. And she said, there were triplets, but the mom really only took to 1. So we've had to really nurse these other ones. And I'm not a farm girl. I don't know a lot about it. In hindsight, I should have known this. But all that to say, so when she moved her arms out, I looked up and there was a third sheep there. And I said, is this the triplet? And she goes, well, no, that's a cow.
Stop. You thought it was a sheep?
It was one of those mini cows. They were the same color. Yes, in hindsight, those are the only similarities.
Sheep go ba-ba, cows go moo.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, please do not tell anyone that this happened. So I made the mistake of telling another friend, and we were having an Easter egg hunt church-wide potluck. And by the end of the day, every single person came up to me and was like, so that is a cow and those are sheep. And that is why I was not called to the rural lands.
Okay, fair.
So, anyway, moving on. Number 19, chapter 19. There are, by the way, some new stuff.
Okay.
More rules for refuge cities.
Oh, okay, more places that you can go to.
I'm starting to think these refuge cities are more like concepts of cities than actual cities. Why are we prepping for places where manslaughter perpetrators can escape to when we haven't even crossed the Jordan? We don't even have one city yet. Why do we have all these other cities that we're talking about?
Yeah, I have no idea. Is it just there was a big issue, and so it's maybe if they were promised a place too, so maybe if we just
get it on the...
It wasn't a stonable offense,
sure.
But maybe if you just go here for a little bit and maybe you can recoup or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
And then the last 2 paragraphs of this chapter just feel like copy and paste. Oh, I am curious. We have verified that the ancient scribes did not have a word processor.
Right. Yes, I don't think so.
So why they...
Like, what's a word processor?
Like Microsoft Word.
Okay. You might have some... I don't know. I don't know what our context is.
Pages? Notes on your phone?
Drafts.
Basically, they had no ability to copy and paste.
Yes.
But yet, that's exactly what they did. They just copied and copied and copied and copied.
Which, to their accreditation, as weird as a lot of this sounds, again, we're going back to if they're coming out of the Babylonian exile, all that information was destroyed. And so this has been passed on generation to generation, and they remembered it. So they retained the information that they learned, which is kind of impressive.
For sure. And yeah, you're right. That's how if you write something down, you're much more likely to remember it.
And then we have this kind of at the end of this is like a concern for justice again, recap. But a little bit of crime management. Like, what do we do and how do we address it? And if I remember right, when we were in Dan, in Israel, wasn't that the place that there was this area where the governor or the judge would sit and they would do all of these things? And so we saw kind of what that would look like after it was established, which was kind of cool.
Oh, my favorite part about chapter 20, well, it's all about war, so that's not my favorite part.
Right?
But there's all these rules for war, how you can conduct war, when you should go into the city, how you should retreat when necessary.
If you're scared.
If you're scared.
Yeah.
Which, fair.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're like, but for God's sake.
Yeah.
Think of the trees.
Yeah, you can eat the fruit of the trees, but don't cut down the trees.
Don't take your sword and smack at the trees.
Right. Just
leave the trees alone.
Leave the trees.
Yeah. It's like a very Captain Planet moment. I appreciated it.
Yeah.
By our powers combined. Day 48, we are into Deuteronomy 21. And it is, you called this the first 48 unsolved murder. And I just said, Law and Order SVU on the scene.
Yeah.
Get Olivia Benson out here because we need someone to solve this case quickly. It talks all about how you should conduct, investigations. Very interesting. It talks about what to do if you want to marry a woman captured from another country.
Yeah.
Neighboring tribe.
Tells you how to...
Got to shave her head, cut her nails, and then if you love her...
Yeah.
You got a wife.
Yeah. So we went from first 48 to marriage, and then we have some children, like parental information.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yes. It says, so first of all, if you have more than one wife and you hate one and love the other,
right.
If you have your first son from the woman that you hate, they still have to be your firstborn.
Right.
You don't get to rearrange the rules there.
Right.
So that's nice.
And if you're married, does this have the one with the married and nope, that's not yet. Okay, never mind.
And then the next one is like, what if you have a rebellious child?
Oh, my parents told me this story all the time. I'm just saying, they're like, you would not have survived back in the day, Chase.
I don't know that anyone would have. If you have a rebellious child, son specifically.
Yeah.
My Bible translation said child, but then all the pronouns were he.
Yeah.
So I was like, they're talking about the boys. The women don't get to have fun enough to be rebellious, right?
Well, in that context, too, it's like you're leaving all of everything to this particular
That's true.
son. And so if they can't handle it now,
Yeah.
then you get a reset.
So if your son is rebellious, you can take him outside the camp, and then you have to tell people.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing is that they were like, and he's a drunkard and a fool. And I was like, this is every teenager.
Right.
Like, their frontal lobes are not developed.
Yeah.
And
Science.
so then you stone them. You just stone your son.
Yeah. Well,
these are not good policies.
No.
I have some amendments. And then afterwards, it talks about, like, you have to bury the executed.
Yeah.
Particularly those who are hung from a tree, because it's very shameful to be hung from a tree. So you have to bury the body immediately.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah. Because it said God's curse is on those who were hanged from a tree. And of course, this is foreshadowing the cross.
Right.
With a lot of the shame that came from, particularly in first century Jewish culture, that came from being crucified, was the fact that it pointed back to this verse from Deuteronomy. So anyway, just a little nugget to hang on to for later. Chapter 22.
What?
Wow.
Just what?
Wow. I think this might be one of those chapters that, we just encourage our audience to read for yourself.
Yeah. I put in the notes, read this one, and I was going to read it here, but you just
and I think it's just like come to your own conclusions, make your own decisions. It does seem to favor men more than women, but so has the rest of the law. So I just wrote, this was not my favorite chapter that we've read so far.
So I don't need to read any of those bullet points.
Where are the bullet points?
The second one.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, you read
I don't think so. I think you'll enjoy reading it. I mean, I don't know that you'll enjoy it. You can read it though.
No, you'll read it and be like, what?
Yeah, you'll be like, what? Yeah, you'll know. Chapter 23, verse 1 is straight violence. It is violence against humanity. It talks about the injury of a man in a specific place.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that. But it's like, don't come to worship.
Don't do it.
Unless you're, as Chase said, unless your bits and pieces are intact.
That's right. Yeah, bits and pieces have to be intact, or you can't come to church. But here's the thing. I really was worried about this. I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. Why would this be a thing? In the context, God made a covenant that they'll be fruitful and multiply and make great nations.
Yep.
And so.
And what was the sign of the covenant? Circumcision.
Yeah.
And we know what body part that involves.
That's right. And so if you're unable to, then it's kind of like, it's just out of the context. Now, again, it takes two parties to make humankind.
Sure.
But it's like, again, it's heavy on the male, you know.
Well, and I'm hoping, this was something that's like, well, I think they do some corrective work in terms of including people who were not whole in that regard.
Yeah.
To help include them.
Yes.
But that is a source of really tension in the community until the time of the Christian church.
Yes.
Because that's something that gets addressed by Paul and by Peter or Philip, I believe, as well, one of the apostles. So,
yes.
Anyway, but yeah, that was a woof.
And then there's a whole other group, the Ammonites and the Moabites, that you had to wait 10 generations point blank before you could come to worship. Sorry.
Those are because they were enemies.
Right.
And so it's like, we'll give you a chance, but not for a while.
Redemption. 10 generations. Can you imagine how many that,
maybe they were hoping they'd give up by then.
Yeah. It's like 400. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Cray.
There's more miscellaneous regulations. Like,
you can read those too.
Yeah. Like, just keep your mind right, I would say.
Right.
Don't be a prostitute. Just general rules to follow. Also, interestingly, don't charge interest to fellow Israelites. Like, the categories are all over the place.
So broad.
I think I could offer some advice in terms of just organization of rules.
Yes, we need a table of contents.
Yeah. But anyway, like, I don't know that I would put sex work next to interest charging, but that's just me. Chapter 24 goes into more marriage rules. Again, it's not a good party if you don't have a solid set of rules.
Right.
These are things to live by.
And these are weird rules too.
Yeah, men can get divorced.
Right.
And if a man divorces his wife, she can go marry someone else.
But only once.
Yeah.
Because if the next husband divorces her, then she's
defiled.
Yeah.
I wonder if this has something to do with the woman at the well and all the negative energy around her.
Oh yeah, and I kind of wondered if the pressure of bearing children was part of it too.
I'm sure. Like, what's the point of even getting married if you can't give them a child, right? Also, newly married men get a 1-year abstention from military draft.
Yep.
So, perks to the old ball and chain, right?
Gosh.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Kidnappers of fellow Israelites die. Again, the organization, like, it's not that these are all, they're just like, I think we could reorganize a bit.
And then, like, the last death sentence of the chapter is like, death to only people who deserve it. But don't worry, you won't get charged with an offense if you're just in proximity. Like,
oh, okay.
Like if it's your kid or somebody else, it's on them.
Yeah. Until we get through basically chapter 26, we move into day 49. Mm-hmm. There's just more rules, and then it talks about tithes and commandments again, all things we've heard.
Yeah.
And then there's in chapter 27, it does kind of shift a bit.
So this is kind of where I think maybe the sacrifice was done. Possibly, we might have to do a little bit more research on this.
Okay.
But when they got there, they did build an altar, and it was on Mount Ebal. And if you look at a map, it's north of Jerusalem, and in fact, it's like parallel to the middle of Jordan between Tiberias, which is Sea of Galilee, if you would, and then the Dead Sea. So it's in the middle, kind of that area, and maybe a couple of clicks over to the west. But it's pretty far north of where Jerusalem is.
Okay. So what happens up here?
So this is where they did all of the curses on the people for everything. So it was like, cursed is anyone who dishonors their father and mother. Cursed is anyone who steals property from a neighbor by moving a boundary marker. Cursed is anyone who leads a blind person astray on the road. And these curses were given out, and then we hear the people of Israel all say, Amen, which is the second time. Like, the first time we get Amen was in Numbers chapter 5. But this is like when we have a proclamation and then an Amen, a proclamation, Amen. And Amen just really means,
so be it.
So be it. Yeah, so be it.
Mine, my translation said, we agree. Oh. So they just scream, we agree multiple times. I thought that was hilarious. Okay, where are we now? We are on chapter 28.
Yes.
Blessings and curses for obedience and disobedience. This is more of those if-then kind of things.
If-then, yeah.
And then...
and this is where I don't really like this. Like, if you obey, then you'll have crops. If you obey, then you'll have rain and all this stuff. Is that a fight against the other deities that people were praying to for rain and wealth and all of that?
Maybe so.
But
maybe that's God's way of saying, like, it's definitely the leadership was leading from a negative space.
Yeah.
Like negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
But, I do get that.
Yeah. Yeah. But don't disobey.
Don't disobey, or you will get wiped out immediately.
Yep.
But the nice thing is that Moses promised that God would wipe them out quickly.
Yeah.
Just a real quick death.
Good.
No problem.
Good.
That's nice.
Right?
But then also, Moses does promise that their corpses will be left for food for wild animals.
I mean, wow.
Oh. So then, chapter 29.
You know what we need?
What?
I think we need a reminder of what's all happened again.
Another recap?
Yes,
please.
Is that what happens?
Yes, it is. In chapter 29, Moses does the old copy and paste, Control C, Control V.
Yes.
And I don't even know that we need to. I actually didn't write any other notes. Like, they're the same.
At the end of this, yes, they're all the same. And then chapter 30.
It's the end.
It's the end. And it really is the Monty Python. Like, choose life or death. Now that you've heard all of this, life
What's
or death.
What's it going to be?
Or cake or death.
I would like cake. I said that this was rough.
Yeah.
I think this was my roughest section yet.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There weren't any stories. Like,
no.
Even in numbers, with the sheer numbers, but there were stories.
Yeah.
This one was just, no one even got harpooned in the middle of the camp for their disobedience.
I know. I mean, it's just, wow, a lot.
I mean, like, bad press is better than no press. Isn't that what they say?
But now that we made it through.
Yes.
Maybe something's around the corner.
Well, I accidentally read forward just a little bit because I was prepping, and Moses is getting ready to announce his next era, the afterlife.
I was going to say, is it death? Because he can't go in.
Yes. He announces his death. And I just honestly, I want to be able to do that. Attention, everyone. I am dying.
No.
Please share your positive thoughts and kind words.
Oh.
And that's what's next.
Yeah.
So, normally we talk about our favorite part of this week.
Yeah.
Do you have one? Do you have something that really stuck out to you?
No, I'm still processing.
I guess I'm thankful that we got to read the Shama. I do like that. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one.
Yeah.
Love the Lord your God. That was nice.
Yes.
So that's probably my favorite part.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing thoughts or?
I am so thankful to live today.
I do think about that a lot. I'm not even sure I would have survived 100 years ago,
No.
let alone, 3,000.
Crazy.
So, well, that's all we have for our show today. We know that sometimes reading the Bible is complicated, but there is one thing that we believe is never complicated, and that's that Jesus loves you. And so that's the whole point of this long and winding and wonderful and weird story. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Bye.